I still remember the first time I realized her voice could undo me. It wasn't during a lecture, or in some crowded room filled with notebooks and noise. It was in the quiet after class, when everyone else had gone home, and the only sound left was the tick of the old clock above the whiteboard. "Are you staying late again?" she asked, her tone casual, but the way her eyes lingered made me stumble for words. "Yes. I just. I like the quiet here," I replied, shifting awkwardly, hugging my notebook closer to my chest like it might steady me. She smiled, not the practiced smile she wore for everyone else, but a smaller one, almost private. At 45, she carried herself with the kind of composure that made silence feel heavier around her. And yet in that moment, I could see something slip, something softer hiding behind her professionalism. The room was dim, sunlight slanting low through the blinds, striping her desk in golden shadow. She leaned back against it, arms crossed, the faintest tension in her shoulders. I couldn't stop looking at her hands, the way her fingers tapped absently against the wood, as if they were restless for something she couldn't name. "You don't talk much, do you?" she said after a pause. I swallowed. "Not when I think I'll sound stupid." Her head tilted, just slightly, and I felt her studying me in a way that made my chest tighten. "You don't sound stupid." "Not to me." The air shifted then. I don't know if it was in her tone, or the way she held my gaze for a beat too long, but I felt my heart stumble against my ribs. I looked away, pretending to pack my things, pretending I didn't feel her eyes on me. It was dangerous, I knew. She was my teacher. She had lived a whole life before I had even learned to stand on my own. And yet, there was something in the way she carried regret in her silence, the way she seemed lonelier than she wanted anyone to notice. I saw it because I recognized it. I wanted to ask her things. About the book she always kept tucked at the corner of her desk. About the ring she no longer wore. About why her smile always faded the second she thought no one was looking. But I said nothing. Instead, I bent to pick up a pen I hadn't dropped, just so I didn't have to meet her eyes. My hands were trembling. "You remind me of someone," she said suddenly. Her voice was low, careful, almost hesitant. I froze. "Who?" She didn't answer right away. She just uncrossed her arms, walked slowly toward the window, and tugged the blinds open another inch. Dust spiraled in the last of the daylight, catching around her like a halo. "Someone I used to know," she said finally, her back to me. And then softer, almost to herself, "someone I shouldn't have let go." The words clung to the air, refusing to fade. I wanted to press her, to make her explain, but my throat felt locked. I stood there, notebook forgotten in my hand, every nerve alive with the possibility that she wasn't just talking about the past. She turned then, and for the first time, there was no shield in her expression. Only weariness, and something that looked frighteningly close to longing. Our eyes caught, and the room seemed to shrink around us. I opened my mouth, not sure what I meant to say, when suddenly, the sharp buzz of her phone lit up the desk. A single message glowed on the screen. Her face went pale. And I realized, whatever line we were about to cross, we weren't alone in it anymore. The next day, I told myself to keep my head down, act normal. Pretend last night hadn't happened, the silence, the way her words had curled around me like they weren't meant for my ears. But pretending was impossible. Every time I glanced at her across the classroom, my chest tightened. She didn't look at me once. She stood at the front, calm and composed, her voice even as she explained something I couldn't focus on. Yet beneath that composure, I saw it, a slight tremor when she adjusted her papers, the way her jaw clenched when her phone buzzed again and again on her desk. She didn't answer it. She never did. I knew whispers about her life drifted through the faculty halls, though I never meant to overhear them. Divorced. Left with more questions than answers. A husband who traded her for someone younger. She never confirmed it, never denied it. But the way her eyes lingered on the empty ring-shaped mark on her finger told me enough. And me? I wasn't much better. 22, still figuring out what it meant to be an adult. My own father used to call me unreliable. My mother thought I should have stayed home instead of chasing a degree. And yet here I was, finding myself drawn to the one person who could never be mine. Or shouldn't be. The age difference was impossible to ignore. She'd lived decades more than I had. She had stories etched into her skin, regrets hidden in her silence. I was just me. Young. Restless. Wanting something I couldn't explain. But attraction doesn't care about math. It doesn't care about rules. It builds in stolen glances, in the way my stomach dropped when her eyes finally flicked to mine mid-lecture, holding me there for the briefest second too long. When the room cleared out, I stayed behind again. I didn't even have an excuse this time. You should go, she said softly, not looking up from the papers she was shuffling. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. I don't want to, I admitted before I could stop myself. The words felt heavier than they should have. That made her look up. Her eyes were tired, rimmed with something like sleeplessness, but beneath it, a flicker of something else, something dangerous. You don't know what you're saying. Maybe not, I said, trying to hold her gaze. But I know how it feels when you look at me. Her lips parted like she wanted to protest, but no words came. Instead, she pressed her palm to her temple, shaking her head. This isn't fair. To you. To me. To anyone. I stepped closer without meaning to, the air between us tightening. Then why don't you stop me? Silence. She didn't move. Didn't breathe, it seemed. And for a long second, the world outside the room didn't exist. When I reached for the paper she was holding, our fingers brushed. A mistake, maybe. But neither of us pulled away. Her skin was warm against mine, her hand trembling just slightly. She looked at me then, really looked, as if she'd been holding back 1,000 words but couldn't release even one. I didn't say anything either. I just let my hand stay where it was, our fingers touching in the kind of silence that says more than speech ever could. And in that silence, I knew something had already shifted between us, something neither of us could undo. The touch of her fingers lingered in my skin long after she pulled away. She dropped the paper like it burned her, retreating behind the safety of her desk. This has to stop, she whispered, though her voice cracked on the last word. I wanted to answer, but the classroom door banged open. Hey, sorry, it was Ryan, my roommate, leaning halfway inside. His grin faded when his eyes flicked from her to me, the silence too sharp to ignore. Am I interrupting? My throat closed. She cleared hers, stepping back into her professional mask so quickly it was almost painful. No. We were just finishing. Ryan gave me a look, curious, suspicious, something I couldn't name. I stuffed my notebook into my bag and brushed past him, my pulse hammering in my ears. Outside, the hallway buzzed with students, but I barely saw them. All I could feel was her gaze still anchored inside me, even when the door shut behind her. That night, Ryan wouldn't let it go. You've been off, he said, sprawled on his bed across from mine. What's going on with you and Dr. Hale? Nothing, I said too quickly. His eyebrows lifted. Nothing, huh? You stay after class every damn day. And she looks at you like, he stopped, smirking. Like she's not just your teacher. I turned away, heat rising in my face. Drop it. But the problem was, he wasn't wrong. The next afternoon, I told myself I'd avoid her. I sat near the back, kept my eyes on my notes, ignored the pull of her voice. But when class ended, and students spilled into the hall, her gaze caught me like a hook. Stay a moment, she said quietly. The room emptied too fast. My chest tightened as the door clicked shut. She stood by the window, sunlight sharp on her face, making her look both older and softer at once. Your friend suspects something, she said, not turning around. I froze. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't have to. She finally faced me, arms crossed, but her composure was fraying. This, whatever this is, it's not safe. Not for you. Not for me. Her words should have ended it. They didn't. Because even as she spoke, she stepped closer, like her body was betraying her own warning. Then tell me to leave, I said, my voice rougher than I meant. Her breath caught. Don't. I don't know which of us moved first. 1 second, there was space. The next, we were inches apart, the tension so sharp it felt like a blade between us. My hand lifted, almost of its own will, hovering just short of her cheek. Her eyes closed, only for a heartbeat, and when they opened again, they shone with something raw, something terrifying. But before I could touch her, her phone rang. Loud. Shattering. She flinched, stepping back as if burned. On the screen, a name flashed. My stomach dropped. Her ex-husband. She silenced it, shoving the phone face down on the desk. Her hands trembled. This isn't fair, she whispered again, but this time her eyes were on me, wet, unguarded. And I realized we were already too far past fair to turn back. I thought I could handle it. The glances, the silence, the weight of her words. But the truth pressed heavier each day, and by the time Friday came, I was unraveling. She avoided me in class, speaking to everyone but me. She never once let her eyes linger. And yet, when the room emptied, she kept me back again. Always me. This time, her voice was sharp. You can't keep looking at me that way. I froze. What way? Her laugh was brittle, humorless. Like you know me. Like you see something I don't want you to see. I swallowed hard. Maybe I do. Her shoulders stiffened, but her mask slipped. Don't. The word was a plea more than a command. I stepped closer, pulse hammering. Then why don't you tell me to leave? She shut her eyes, whispering, because I don't want you to. The air snapped between us. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. And for the first time, I saw her walls crumble, regret spilling into longing, composure breaking under the weight of years she hadn't spoken of. Her phone buzzed on the desk again. She silenced it without looking. Is it him? I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp, wounded. Don't. I pressed anyway. Do you still love him? The silence stretched too long. She turned away, her hands braced on the desk. Love isn't the same as staying. He left because he could. And I stayed because, she shook her head. Because I didn't know how not to. Her voice cracked, and something inside me twisted. He doesn't get to keep hurting you, I said, my tone sharper than I meant. She spun toward me, anger flashing. And what? You think you can fix me? That this, whatever this is, makes sense. I faltered, heat rushing to my face. No. But I know what it feels like to want someone so much it makes you stupid. Her breath hitched. The anger drained, leaving something rawer, more dangerous. She stepped toward me, slow, deliberate, until the space between us was nothing but air and nerves. Do you have any idea what happens if we don't stop this now? I whispered, then stop me. Her lips parted. Her hand lifted like she meant to push me away, but instead it hovered at my chest, not quite touching. Every second stretched unbearably. I could feel the tremor in her fingers, the battle in her eyes. She wanted to step back. She didn't. I can't, she whispered, her voice breaking, I can't survive losing something again. The room was too quiet. My own heart was loud enough to drown everything. I leaned closer, just close enough that the air warmed between us, just close enough to feel the question trembling there. Her eyes closed. And then, the door handle rattled. We both froze. Someone was on the other side, the door handle clicked, but no one entered. Just a shadow through the glass, a pause too long, and then footsteps fading down the hall. We stayed frozen, our breaths held, until silence pressed in again. She was the first to move, jerking her hand from my chest as though waking from a dream. This is out of control, she whispered, pacing toward the window. I wanted to answer, but my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Ryan lit the screen. What the hell are you doing with her? People are talking. My stomach dropped. I looked up at her, and she was already watching me. What is it? She asked, her voice too calm, too sharp. I shoved the phone away. Nothing. Her eyes narrowed, she didn't believe me. But before she could push, her own phone chimed from the desk. A voicemail. She hesitated, then pressed play. Her ex-husband's voice filled the room. I saw you today. Still clinging to the past? Careful, people notice things. Don't embarrass yourself again. The words hung heavy, cutting deeper than he probably knew. But the look on her face, pain and fury all at once, told me he knew exactly what he was doing. She deleted the message with shaking fingers. He won't stop. He never stops. I took a step closer. Then let me know. Her voice cracked like glass. You don't get pulled into this. You don't know what he's capable of. But the truth was, I did know, maybe not him, but the way control felt when someone held it over you. My father's voice still echoed in my head, years later, cutting me down with every word. You think I don't understand? My voice rose, harsher than I meant. I've spent my whole life being told I'm nothing. By him. By everyone. And then you look at me like I'm worth something, and you expect me to just walk away? Her lips parted, eyes wide, caught between anger and something else. The silence that followed was unbearable. Until she whispered, almost too softly to hear, I told myself I wouldn't make this mistake again. I blinked. Again? She flinched like she hadn't meant to say it. Her arms wrapped around herself, as if bracing against a storm. There was someone, years ago. A student. Younger than me. It was nothing, it ended quickly, but the fallout, she shook her head. It destroyed everything. My marriage. My career. Me. The room tilted around me. This wasn't just dangerous, it was history repeating itself. But before I could speak, she stepped closer, her voice trembling. And yet here I am again. Letting you get too close. I searched her face, torn between anger and something deeper. So what now? Do we pretend this never happened? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for the blinds, snapping them shut, sealing us away from the hallway, from the world outside. Her hand lingered on the cord. Then she turned back to me, her eyes unguarded, her voice raw. I don't know if I can stop this anymore. The blinds rattled as they fell shut, plunging the room into half-light. For a moment neither of us moved, as if sealing ourselves away had left no way out. She pressed her hands to the edge of her desk, her knuckles white. You don't understand what you're asking of me, she whispered. I stepped closer, every nerve on fire. I'm not asking for forever. I'm asking you to stop pretending this isn't real. Her eyes snapped up to mine, and for once there was no mask, just fear, raw and unhidden. Do you think I haven't wanted to? Every time I see you, her voice cracked. She turned away, her shoulders trembling. You make me feel alive again. And that terrifies me. The words hit like a confession and a punishment all at once. My throat tightened. Then let it terrify you. Because it terrifies me too. Her laugh was broken, almost bitter. You're so young. You think love can outrun the world. But I've lived long enough to know it doesn't. Maybe, I said, moving closer still, until I could feel her breath against mine. But it's not the world I want. It's you. Her lips parted, eyes darting between mine like she was searching for the weakness that would let her push me away. Instead, her hand lifted, trembling, until her fingertips brushed the side of my face. It was the softest touch, but it undid me. My breath shuddered. Say it, I whispered. She hesitated, her thumb grazing my jaw as if she wasn't sure she was allowed to want this. And then, finally, she breathed it, so quiet I almost didn't catch it. I love you. The words weren't perfect. They were raw, wrecked, drenched in fear and longing. But they were real. I closed the space between us, not in a rush, but in surrender, until our foreheads touched, until her tears dampened my skin. "This will ruin us," she whispered. "Then let it," I murmured back. Her lips hovered against mine, trembling with restraint. For one suspended moment, we teetered on the edge of something that could never be taken back. And then, she kissed me. It wasn't polished, or graceful, or careful. It was desperate, unsteady, like two people trying to breathe through the same wound. Her hands tangled in my shirt, mine gripped her waist, pulling her closer, terrified she'd vanish if I let go. But just as quickly, she broke away, her chest heaving, eyes wet and wide. "We can't," she said, though her voice betrayed her. I nodded, though every part of me screamed to hold her. "I know." For the first time, we weren't teacher and student, older and younger, broken and whole. We were just two people standing in the wreckage of everything we'd been hiding from. And even if we walked out that door pretending nothing had happened, we both knew the truth. We'd already chosen each other. The Monday after felt heavier than any storm. The air in the classroom was too still, the students' voices too loud. She stood at the front, her expression composed again, the mask perfectly back in place. To anyone else, nothing had changed. But I knew better. Every time her eyes skimmed past me without landing, every time she kept her distance, I could still feel the ghost of her lips against mine. The kiss that shouldn't have happened. The kiss that changed everything. When the lecture ended, I waited. I didn't know if she'd call me back again, or if she'd finally draw the line. But as the last student left, she spoke without looking at me. "Close the door." My pulse stumbled. I obeyed, the click of the lock sounding louder than it should. For a long moment, she didn't speak. She just stood there, staring at the papers in her hands like they might give her courage. Finally, she set them down and lifted her eyes to me. "I told myself I wouldn't repeat the past," she said quietly. "I told myself I couldn't survive it again." I swallowed. "Then tell me this was a mistake." Her lips parted. No words came. I stepped closer, careful, slow. "Because I won't believe it. Not after what you said." Her hand lifted as if to stop me, but instead it hovered in the air between us. Trembling. "I love you," she whispered again, softer this time, but steadier. "And that terrifies me." I exhaled shakily, a half-smile breaking through the weight in my chest. "Then let's be terrified together." Her laugh was small, broken at the edges, but real. And then she did something I hadn't expected, she reached for my hand. Not a desperate grab like before, not a mistake. A choice. Our fingers laced, warm and certain. "I don't know what happens after this," she admitted. "I don't know if it destroys me, or saves me." "Maybe both," I said. "But at least it's ours." For the first time, she didn't pull away. She didn't hide. She just stood there with me, letting the silence stretch, letting the truth settle. The blinds were still drawn. The door was still locked. The world outside would keep moving, keep judging, keep whispering. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Because she had chosen me. And I had chosen her. Maybe it would end in ruin. Maybe it would end in something better. But whatever it was, it had already begun. I squeezed her hand, and she squeezed back, a quiet promise neither of us dared put into words. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?